lines that are parallel have the same slopes. So parallel means that lines never cross. So if you have this line and you have this line, well, I tried to make them look parallel. This is a parallel symbol, but it means that they never intersect, so they must have the exact same slope. The rise and the run are going to be the same, such that they never intersect. Lines that are perpendicular have opposite reciprocals for their slopes. So pair perpendicular lines look like this. If one's positive and somewhat steep, the other one's negative and not steep at all. Here's another example. Really positive and steep, negative and not steep at all. So opposite reciprocals means makes the slope opposite. So if it's positive, make it negative. And reciprocal would be the reciprocal of 2/5 is 5/2. Because you flip it over. Or it's 1 over the number. So for each of these examples, I'm going to look at the equation of the line, find the slope, and then write what the parallel slope would be and perpendicular slope. The notation for parallel is two segments that are diagonal. The notation for perpendicular is that symbol. So for the first one, this is written in slope-intercept form. The slope is 2/5. So the parallel slope has to be the exact same. And the perpendicular slope would be take 2/5, write the reciprocal, which is 5/2, and then take the opposite of that number, which is negative 5/2. The second equation is written in point slope form. So the slope is -3. So the parallel slope is -3. And the perpendicular slope is take the reciprocal of 3, which is 1/3, because 3 is the same thing as 3 over 1. And then you're going to make it opposite, so it's positive 1/3. This was negative, so the perpendicular slope is going to be positive. The second one's written in standard form, so we're going to have to solve for y in order to figure out what the slope is. So if I solve for y, I need to subtract 2x from each side. So I get y equals -2x plus 5. So the slope of this line is the number that's in front of x. So the slope is -2. Slope parallel is -2. And perpendicular is take the reciprocal of 2, which is 1/2, and I'm going to make this positive. So it's just positive 1/2. Next one, I need to solve for y, because I want to put it in slope-intercept form. So when you solve for y, you need to divide each term by 3. So this is going to be -1/3 x plus 3. So the slope is -1/3. The slope parallel is -1/3. And the slope that's perpendicular is 3. Okay, y equals -4. Y equals -4, if you remember, is a horizontal line. So y equals our horizontal lines. So the slope is 0. So the slope that's perpendicular is 0. So the reciprocal is to take 1 divided by the number. So 1 divided by 0 is undefined. So the slope that's perpendicular to a horizontal line is going to be a vertical line, which is undefined. So that makes sense. Then I'm going to do x equals 3. So x equals 3 is a vertical line. So the slope of a vertical line is undefined. The slope perpendicular to a vertical line is a horizontal line, which has a slope of 0. Or actually, I jumped ahead. So this slope parallel would be undefined. And the slope perpendicular would be 0. So 0 to undefined are both perpendicular to each other. Okay, next part of examples. Start with writing an equation in point-slope form, then put it in slope-intercept form. So letter A, write an equation for a line that contains this point and is parallel to this line. So if I just draw a rough sketch of 3x plus 9, here's 9, it looks like this. But this question's asking you to, okay, let's start at 2, negative 6 now, which is right here, and then let's make a line parallel. So they're obviously going to have, I shouldn't say obvious, but they are going to have different y-intercepts, but because they're parallel, the slopes are going to be the same. So you're just going to take this point that we need to go through, and you're going to use the slope of this line. But you're not even going to use the y-intercept of this line. So first I'm going to write it in point-slope form. So it's going to be y plus 6 equals my slope, which is 3, times x minus 2. Then the directions read that I need to put it in slope-intercept form. So to put it in slope-intercept form, you do the distributive property, and then solve for y. Okay, letter B. Write an equation for a line that contains 1/8, and it's perpendicular to this line. So you have this line, y equals 3/4 x plus 1. So it looks like this. Now you want to write an equation of a line that goes through 1/8 that's perpendicular. So we know the slope that we're going to use is the opposite reciprocal of this, but again, we don't even care about this y-intercept. We just want this slope. So the slope right here is 3/4, so the slope that's perpendicular is negative 4/3. So I'm going to write this in point-slope form. Y minus 8 equals negative 4/3 times x minus 1. So it's y minus 8 equals negative 4/3 x plus 4/3. Then I'm going to add 8 to each side in order to solve for y. So it's y equals negative 4/3 x. And then I'm going to add 4/3 plus 8. So 8 plus 4/3, this is 24/3. If I get with the common denominator, so it's going to be plus 28/3. This is called an improper fraction. If you want to write it as a mixed number, you do how many 3's go into 28, and that is 9 with 1 left over. So either one of these equations is fine. Okay, on the second part, or last part, determine if the lines are parallel, so that means their slopes are equal, perpendicular, that means their slopes are opposite reciprocals, or neither means that it's not the case for either of them. So what you need to do is, we need to figure out what their slopes are. So I always write in slope-intercept form to figure out what the slopes are. So I'm going to subtract 3x in this problem, and then I'm going to divide by 2. So when I do that, I'm going to divide each term by 2. So this is negative 5/2, and this is negative 3/2 x. So my slopes are 2/3 and negative 3/2. So those are perpendicular because 2/3 and negative 3/2 are opposite reciprocals. Another way that you can show two slopes are perpendicular is you can multiply them. If they're opposite reciprocals, it means that when you multiply the slopes, you get -1. So you can show it like this, or you can write it like this. I've seen it both ways. Some teachers might have you show their opposite reciprocals by finding the product of the slopes and showing that it's equal to -1. Okay, letter B. What you want to do is figure out the slope of each line. So this is already in slope-intercept form, so the slope is 3 for that equation. Then I'm going to solve for y with this equation. So be careful you have a negative y, so you have to divide both terms over here by -1. So it's 1 plus 3x. So this has a slope of 3. So if these slopes are both the same, then they are parallel because slopes are equal. So if we got to a situation where the numbers were not equal and the slopes were not negative or opposite reciprocals, then I would write neither. Okay, letter C, y equals 4 and y equals -4. So the slope of y equals is this is a horizontal line at 4, so the slope is 0, and this one is a horizontal line at -4, so the slope is 0. So these two slopes are the same, so they are parallel because slopes are equal.